This presentation will discuss the preservation of vinyl records. I'll explain the history of vinyls, different aspects of preservation, a famous archive for these kinds of records, and why we should preserve this format. Finally, the presentation will end with 2 discussion questions for you to respond to. Let's get started. First, let's talk a little bit about the history of vinyl records. Back in the late 1890s, the earliest version of the vinyl record that we know today was created by Emil Berliner. This groove disc was the prototype for all sizes of vinyl disc that would come later. However, it was composed of a different material than vinyl. Berliner's disc played at a rate of 78 revolutions per minute and was made of a combination of vulcanized rubber, latex, lacquer, and shellac. This disc generally held 2 songs per side. While this format stayed in favor for a while, another format of groove disc was created in 1948, the 33 1/3 RPM vinyl. Created by Columbia Records, the 33 was made of polyvinyl chloride and was much sturdier than its shellac predecessor. The 33 played 21 minutes on each side, essentially playing a full album on one disc. Shortly after the invention of the 33, though, the 45 RPM disc followed. These discs were smaller and only played 4 to 5 minutes per side, perfect for LPs or long plays typically released by an artist for a single. The invention of the Sony Walkman, a portable cassette player, began the slow decline of vinyl records. 5 years after the Walkman was released, vinyls had almost completely fallen out of favor. Yet in 2008, for really no reason in particular, vinyl records began to see a resurgence in sales. In fact, vinyl records soared, reaching an 89% increase that year. In 2008, there were around 9.7 million vinyl records sold. Perhaps it was because of nostalgia for the past that vinyls came alive again. When I asked my parents to pull out their old record player from the attic in 2013, they didn't understand the interest, but I was certainly not the only person looking to revive vinyl records. So once again, here are the main differences between the different kinds of vinyls. 78s are the oldest disc, made actually with shellac and not vinyl. They were large with a shorter playing time. 45s are the main competitor with 33s at the time of their creation, since they were smaller discs that held single or dual tracks. Typically considered for LPs, 33s became the main format for vinyl, surpassing 45s in popularity. They were the largest discs, but they had the longest play time at nearly 45 minutes. The composition of the earliest version of the vinyl disc was frequently made with shellac. Interestingly, shellac was made from the secretion left behind by female lac bugs on trees. The main problem with this type of material is that it is extremely breakable. Even one fall to the floor when in use will leave it shattered. Vulcanized rubber and lacquer were frequently used in combination with shellac discs as composite materials and outer coatings. Once shellac discs were replaced with vinyl discs, these materials were no longer used to make audio discs of this nature. The material used to create the vinyl discs that we know today is polyvinyl chloride, also known as PVC. And yes, that's the same PVC that is used for piping in many buildings and construction projects. Vinyl came into favor in the 1940s and continues to be used today since it's a sturdier material than shellac and makes for smoother playing. In the next few slides, we're going to talk a bit about preserving vinyl discs. The first aspect of preservation is properly handling the disc. Handling the disc in the right way can keep it clean and prevent any scratches or breakages, all of which keeps it in the best possible condition for playback. First, discs should always be handled using clean, freshly washed hands. Any dust or substances on the hands can easily be transferred to the disc, creating a buildup that can inhibit playback. Next, when picking up the disc, they should always be touched or picked up by the outer edges of the disc or the labeled areas in the center. Touching the grooved areas of the disc should always be avoided, as this can create scratches or smudges. Finally, when holding the disc for longer periods of time, it should be supported using both hands. Do not pinch the disc or hold it with one finger in the center, but rather support the weight of it with both hands on the outer edges. This will prevent any dropping of the disc that could damage it beyond repair. Repair, treatment, and reformatting are important steps in the preservation of vinyl discs. One of the common problems with vinyl is delamination, in which the acetate coating used on the disc will separate from the inside. Another problem is the formation of palmitic acid, a dry or crystallized white powder along the surface of the disc. A moist powder residue may also indicate the presence of fungal growth. Older discs made with shellac will become brittle over time, while newer vinyl discs will last much longer. To repair discs with powder or fungal growth, or just general grubby discs, they should be cleaned using one of two methods. The dry method cleans the disc by removing dust, dirt, or debris with a brush. The wet method involves the application of a solution, usually deionized water or a solvent, to the surface of the disc that will clean any dirt, dust, or debris. The stylus of the turntable should be cleaned before playing discs by brushing it from back to front, and any discs that are delaminating should be spot cleaned only. Delaminating discs are difficult to repair and should be given to an expert conservationist to repair. Warped discs can be pressed back into shape in order to retain their original sound. Scratched ones should always be given a good cleaning before any other repair is attempted, as this may solve the problem. However, there are other methods for repairing these discs that require the expertise of a conservationist trained to fix vinyl discs. In the case of ones that are delaminating, it is nearly impossible to reformat them. For other discs, the decision to reformat should be made based on a variety of factors. Uniqueness is one factor determining reformatting. If the item in a collection is unique and not held by many other libraries or archives, it is ideal to reformat to a more recent format. Technical obsolescence is another factor. However, the technology to play vinyl discs is still available. If the item has cultural value, it may be worth reformatting. Additionally, if the disc in the collection is the first in its generation, meaning the master copy, it should be reformatted into a second generation. Finally, priority should be given to discs that are likely to deteriorate. If one in a collection is lacquer and the other is made of PVC, the lacquer disc may reformat before the PVC disc. This should be stored in polyethylene sleeves, even if the original plastic sleeve is still available. However, if the disc is still contained in a paper sleeve, this paper sleeve may also be stored inside the polyethylene sleeve. To minimize any kind of warping, discs should be stored vertically with dividers every 4 to 6 inches on shelving, and the shelving should be able to hold up to 50 pounds per shelf foot. Discs may also be stored in sleeves grouped inside archival boxes on the shelf. Anything that's broken or cracked should be stored lying flat. The room used to store these discs should always be kept away from UV sources, with a minimum temperature from 65 to 70 degrees and a relative humidity level not exceeding 50%. I just wanted to show an example of one of the well-known archives for vinyl records. The British Library has a division for sound preservation that includes sounds and videos from all over the world. They note that they have over 1 million discs, including vinyls, that they preserve in their collection. Some of the records they preserve include drama and literature recordings, oral history, accents and dialects, classical music recordings, pop music recordings, and world and traditional music recordings. They also provide many of these vinyls in digital formats for online use. Vinyl records are an important step in the history of music. The records that we keep and preserve can tell us a lot about what we listened to and what kind of music we centered during certain periods of time, both on an individual level and a cultural level. Vinyl records that were especially important to cultural history should be preserved in their original format as long as possible, but when necessary, we should reformat them in order to preserve the sounds of history. Preserving these materials can tell us about ourselves as individuals, as well as about our larger community, country, and culture. These materials can also serve as vital materials for researchers of all backgrounds to reference and learn from. My first discussion question is, do you think that vinyl records are worth preserving, even though they have become so outdated with the advent of digital music listening and streaming services? Do they warrant the funding and resources they require to be preserved? And my second discussion question is, I maintain my own vinyl collection at home, albeit rather amateurly. I've had it since I was a teenager, and I think it's interesting to see how the records I've bought over the years have evolved with my own changing tastes. Consider a collection that you maintain, even if it's not vinyls. What is it? What does it contain? What does it say about you and your tastes? And does it tell a story about you? Thank you.